Elon, go ahead.
Sure.
What are the checks and balances that are in place to ensure that there is accountability and transparency?
Well, we actually are trying to be as transparent as possible. In fact, we post our actions to the Doge handle on X and to the Doge website. So all of our actions are maximally transparent. In fact, I don't think there's been, I don't know of a case where an organization has been more transparent than the Doge organization.
Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. Kris Goldsmith is back. He's the CEO of Task Force Butler, which identifies and tracks and holds accountable extremists across the country. Kris, you got some big news for us. Bring us up to speed.
Yeah, so I want to be clear that I'm doing this in my personal capacity as a veteran. But myself, a bunch of unions, and a bunch of other veterans have sued the federal government to stop Elon Musk and his doggy boys from accessing all of our data. The claim that we're making is pretty cut and dry. This is a clear violation of the Privacy Act, which was passed after Richard Nixon used the government to spy on private citizens. So what we're asking of the judge is simple. Just put an end to these violations of the Privacy Act.
You referred to the Elon Musk doggy boys. We did a short hit on those, but for those who didn't catch it, can you talk about the interns that he is sending in to these government departments and accessing critical systems? And it has to be assumed critical information, potentially about you and me. Can you talk about the people who are spearheading this effort?
Yeah, Elon Musk brought in a group of 19 to 25-year-old hackers, some of whom have prior associations with criminal hacking organizations online, people who basically commit extortion after extracting things like private photos from other people's phones, like really nasty stuff. The 19-year-old who just graduated high school, he was fired from a previous job for leaking sensitive information. These are people that could not possibly pass any sort of background check for any reasonable company. I mean, Elon Musk enjoys the company of criminals, and I guess that's why he's brought this group together. But people need to understand what these young men have access to and who they are. First, let's talk about what they have access to. They have everything in Treasury. So if you've ever paid taxes, if you've ever gotten a tax refund, they have your Social Security number, your bank account number, they have your home address, all of this history, right? If you've ever served in the military, they've got your data from the OPM, the Office of Personnel Management. So your entire military history. My background check to get my secret security clearance is at OPM. And now there's a 19-year-old associate of criminals who was fired from a job for previously leaking sensitive information, who has basically unlimited access to this data. If you've ever taken out a federal a student loan, well, they've got complete access to the Department of Education. So they've got your bank accounts there too. This is a group of kids and young men who grew up hanging out with online criminals. And there's an element of radicalization here. Several of these individuals involved in Elon's doggy group have been associated with Nick Fuentes. They're retweeting an organizer for January 6th and the insurrection that followed, who is an avowed white supremacist and marched with other neo-Nazis at Charlottesville in 2017. We've got one who came out and was tweeting under an account that had originally been his full name, tweeting things like normalize Indian hate and talking specifically about hating the people from India who Elon Musk gives H-1B visas and underpays, basically, using slave labor to replace domestic workers. And this guy, after he resigned because the Wall Street Journal found these tweets, which were not old, they were from like a few weeks before he moved into government, he resigned, and then Elon Musk said, I want to bring him back. And J.D. Vance, a veteran who's Ivy League educated, he said, I want to take that guy who specifically hates people from India, and I want to make sure that he gets back into government. J.D. Vance's wife, her family is from India. J.D. Vance's children are Indian. It is mind-blowing to see how far this man has fallen.
And in that tweet, J.D. Vance called this 25-year-old a kid who shouldn't be punished for something he did online. It got me thinking about when adulthood starts for these guys. When I was 25, I was leading recon missions off of North Korea. Now, it has to be said, I served with 19 to 24-year-olds who I would have given my life for, right? Who risked their lives for me. But that's a whole different category than the 19 to 24-year-olds we're talking about. You called it in our last interview about this. We didn't have the data yet on these folks, but you predicted, just given your understanding of the Elon Musk milieu and the ideology that infects it, that these guys were part of that. And sure enough, one of them is tweeting normalize Indian hate, or I was racist before it was cool. That is the ethos that people around Musk buy into.
Yeah, and it is wild to me that the vice president of the United States, he's not the vice president for Republican states or for racists. He's the vice president of these United States. And he sought out to rehire that avowed racist who, again, comes out of a hacker community that is filled with neo-Nazis and people who do things like trade child porn and commit extortion against children because they steal or coerce them into giving away compromising photos. I mean, the distance between some of the worst people that I have ever researched in my life and these doggy boys, Elon Musk's team, is like 1 degree. There is not any separation between them.
And by extension, the distance between some of those worst people and the White House is, it's a stone's throw at this point. Well, it's a tweet, right? J.D. Vance is saving the careers, elevating the stature of at least one of these people in particular. Speaking of J.D. Vance, I am getting the sense that he is laying the groundwork for this administration to openly defy court orders. During the campaign, or in the run-up to the campaign, I think it was while he was auditioning for the role of vice president, he had that infamous podcast where he gave Donald Trump that advice to fire every mid-level bureaucrat in the government, replace them with, quote, our people, and if the Supreme Court tells me to stop, tell them to enforce that decision. That was alarming. That was alarming, but he was not even a candidate then. Now he is the vice president of the United States, and he is tweeting out things about how the judiciary in this country should not be able to exercise authority over illegal, unconstitutional acts. I'm paraphrasing. That is my assessment, committed by the executive branch. I think they're planning something.
Yeah. So J.D. Vance, like Peter Thiel and like virtually everyone in Musk and Trump's orbit now, believe in a unitary executive. They believe in near monarchical powers in the executive branch. And I just wrote an article about this on Substack yesterday, where I'm talking about how J.D. Vance and Elon Musk have embraced the all-out warfare on the co-equal branches of government, and to be clear, not the individuals, not individual members of Congress, or talking about attacking individual judges. They're doing that too, but they're attacking the institutions and the very value that they bring to us. The founders created 3 co-equal branches in government. That is the founding principle of our Constitution, to avoid a tyrannical leader, right? They were breaking away from England, from a king who was a tyrant. And now J.D. Vance, who has sworn an oath to the Constitution several times over, is doing everything he can to destroy that very Constitution.
Hey everyone, it's Ken. I need a quick favor. We are launching Valor Media Network, a new YouTube channel to highlight positive role models who will take on the toxic influencers of the so-called manosphere. Think Joe Rogan. We've got some great hosts already lined up. You'll recognize some of them like Jason Kander, Dan Barkoff, and Bobby Jones. And we've got more coming on board soon. Please click on the link below to Valor Media Network's YouTube page and hit that subscribe button. These early signups make all the difference. Thank you so much. It's probably not a coincidence that the resurgence of this theory of the unitary executive occurred during the early years of the global war on terror, when the executive was seeking, unchecked power for enhanced interrogations, code for torture, for unrestricted warfare in the guise of the authorization for the use of military force. And a Yale law grad, John Yoo, issued that memo. Well, there was the torture memo, but the whole theory of the case was wrapped around the unitary executive. And it feels like J.D. Vance, another Yale law grad, has inherited that really shameful legacy.
Yeah. So, I think back to the most famous quote from Nixon, aside from "I am not a crook," where he talks about when the president does it, that by definition means it's not illegal, right? Americans used to agree that when Nixon said that, that was crazy. That was an indication of how far Nixon felt that the president could go. Literally, he could murder someone, and because he's the president, it's not illegal. That seems to be the legal theory that Vice President J.D. Vance is trying to operate under. When he's talking about saying that there is no legitimate judicial branch, that judges cannot restrict a president from going outside of their constitutional prerogatives, he is saying that, we no longer have a democracy. We live in a fascist, authoritarian, totalitarian state. He is wrong. We do not live in a totalitarian state. But the Trump administration, Elon Musk and J.D. Vance, they are working to push us into a constitutional crisis. Now, Donald Trump has already shown that he is more than happy to violate court orders. That's what he's done in his private life for decades. That's what he did as president, and that's what he's going to continue doing. What stopped it from being so bad during the first administration was the so-called adults in the room. The closest thing to an adult in the room now is a billionaire who's unaccountable, who brought in a bunch of kids to steal your data and my data, plug it into an AI system that is not monitored by the government, that is not regulated by the government, who's one of the largest federal contractors, who's going through and stopping payments to nonprofits that help Americans around the country, right? J.D. Vance and Elon Musk are doing everything that they can to complete the fascist vision that Donald Trump is too stupid to imagine.
I'm old enough to remember when that fascist vision was limited to tweets and stupid pronouncements like I could shoot someone in Fifth Avenue and I wouldn't lose any supporters. Now, the Trump administration and Trump's lawyers are making that case in court. Another classmate of mine, John Sauer, we were at Duke together. We actually knew each other relatively well, was the lead attorney arguing that if Trump orders SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival, that can't be prosecutable because it's done under the official exercise of his government powers. It's not just tweets anymore. It's not just J.D. Vance suggesting it on a podcast. They are creating a legal architecture to defy courts, to run roughshod over the law. I don't think, because I'm not paranoid enough yet, maybe I should be, I don't think they are seriously talking about, executions of political enemies. But on the other hand, when you remove Secret Service protection for your critics, like General Milley, who has an Iranian hit out on him, maybe that's maybe that's just as bad.
Yeah, I mean, to allow someone to get murdered because of your inaction is just as bad as participating in the murder itself, if you ask me, and I think if you ask most reasonable people. I am no fan of John Bolton. I am an Iraq War veteran who came home pretty pissed off about the way that that Bush Republicans started and then executed the never-ending global war on terror, right?
Yep.
I'm not a fan of John Bolton, but I recognize that as someone who has served this country at the highest levels in national security apparatus, that man needs to be protected from the Iranians who want to kill him and have an active hit out on him. We don't agree on much at all. In fact, I think John Bolton is a coward for not speaking out more often when he was working for Trump. Right? I do not like that man, but I don't think that we as Americans should start to allow our foreign adversaries to assassinate our political opponents stateside. That is just as bad as encouraging or engaging in assassinations themselves. And we should be clear about using this language. Donald Trump is trying to get his critics assassinated. Let me say that again. Donald Trump is trying to get his critics assassinated, including people who worked for him, people who served in the military for decades before Donald Trump ever dreamed of running for office, right? Real patriots who I don't agree with a lot of things on, right? They are Americans. And at the end of the day, if the president of the United States, if the commander in chief is abdicating his duty to protect them, I think 20 years ago, that would have been worthy of impeachment. But unfortunately, the Republican Party has become so obsessed with the idea of causing harm, real world harm to their enemies, that they have reached the point where they are actively supporting a president of the United States who is trying to get his political opponents assassinated.
And the desired effect might be reached without that actually happening. First of all, it would only take one, right? For the critics to shut up, for their families to say, you got to quit going on MSNBC or even Fox News and saying anything negative about the president. But I feel like that is already happening. When you look at the behavior of some of these Republican senators, and we're hearing whispers of this behind the scenes, that some of their incentives for giving him a blank check with his cabinet nominees is that they're fearful. You saw this in the run up to January 6th, terrified Republicans who chose not to vote for impeachment because they were afraid for their lives, or maybe more importantly, their families' lives. They're now in the crosshairs as well. This threat, even if it's just implied, can have the same effect.
And this is precisely why I am a plaintiff on this lawsuit, to stop Elon Musk and DOGE from pillaging all of our private data. I, as someone, right, I'm wearing the shirt, Cops Don't Stop Nazis, we do. We're at Task Force Butler, we're the ones who perform the research necessary to hold neo-Nazis and other domestic extremists accountable for committing violent crimes, right? That's what we do. Police aren't as proactive about their investigations as we are. The results of our investigations have been pretty significant for a small, underfunded nonprofit with no staff. Last month, our research resulted in a $3 million judgment against a neo-Nazi. We have put a neo-Nazi behind bars for a felony, hate crime, which was actually committed against my family. He hand-delivered a death threat to my mother's house to send a message. It was political retribution for the research that Task Force Butler and I did against the neo-Nazi organization Patriot Front. Those are the Best Buy uniform looking guys with the white neck gaiters who jump out of U-Hauls, right? We cost them $3 million with their research. And the research that we put out in 2022, within months of that, a neo-Nazi showed up in my mother's house, right? So I am suing DOGE, or excuse me, I am suing the federal government to stop DOGE from getting access to my data, because DOGE is made up of a bunch of young men who have Nazi-aligned beliefs, who come from online communities filled with cyber criminals. I have no reason to expect that they wouldn't specifically target me as a loud critic of this administration, of Elon Musk, and of DOGE. I have no reason to believe that they won't do everything that they can to get my private data into the worst online places in the world and try to get me killed. That is the stakes of this lawsuit. I do believe that these young men, these unvetted hackers, I do believe that they are the types who would exploit my data and the data of researchers like me, people who research extremists who, join the insurrection, right? Who Donald Trump is sympathetic to and Elon Musk are sympathetic to. People in my field might get murdered because Elon Musk wants to punish us for researching extremism.
And it would be done quietly. It would be simply posting an address on a Reddit chat thread or sending it to someone untraceably. Yeah, that's one of my fears as well, which is why I have a big German Shepherd. And I've met your dogs. They're going to take good care of you too. But good luck with the lawsuit. We'll be tracking it. We need you to win this one.
Thank you. And people who want to learn more about the lawsuit, please follow Protect Democracy, protectdemocracy.org. They're the ones who've been helping myself, other veterans, and these unions who've joined us in this lawsuit.
We'll put a link in the show notes. Thanks as always, Kris.
Thanks a lot, brother.